Hello and welcome to Some Patches Required, a show where we hope to educate and entertain you on the ever-turbulent games industry. I'm one of your hosts, Zach.
And I am your other host, Aaron.
And before we jump into it, I just want to say thank you to all of the returning listeners, or perhaps if you are a new listener, I would also like to thank you. Please make sure to hit that like button, share our content, it helps us grow, and we certainly appreciate it. Also, before I forget to mention it, today's episode, actually I will take this seriously, today's episode does have some content warning kind of stuff in it that pertains to self-harm. So if that is something that you are sensitive to and have trouble with, understandably so, just giving you a warning. It's not going to be the majority of the episode, but unfortunately this topic does dip into that kind of territory.
Yeah, which is it's a challenging one, and it is upsetting. So again, like Zach said, if that's something that you're just not in the place where you can, be around that sort of conversation, we won't be at all upset to catch you on the next episode. No worries there.
And I guess we can do our best to try and flag that in the on YouTube, we can do it a little bit easier than on some of the podcasting platforms. So if you're watching on YouTube, we can actually bookmark stuff. So we'll do a job of trying to make sure that we do that effectively. And
we'll also drop the time codes in the descriptions and whatnot, just so in case you do want to manually skip around, feel free to take a look down there for that.
Exactly. And to get to the topic at hand, without further ado, grunt birthday sound. I just like the grunt birthday sound. I'm obsessed with it. I listened to the audio you put in there per my request during the last recording, and I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan.
No, it worked. That was actually a tremendously enjoyable 15 seconds of the podcast. It's difficult to peak in the episode, so early in the episode, and also during the part that is not about anything that the show is about.
Yeah, that's really depressing that it peaked in the first 5 minutes of audio.
But at the very least, I do have the grunt birthday sound in my sound library now. But yeah, kind of thematically related, our topic this time around, the first one of the distant future, the year 2025, is not immediately gaming related, which is a little bit of a departure for us. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it kind of signals a shift in our approach to what we're doing with the show. It just, just to kind of build it up before Zach finally gets to that grunt party birthday sound reveal. I might have to edit that in 8 times now. It is just kind of it feels like an important topic, and also something that's very 2025. We can say that 20 days in,
very
even though I think
2025 coded.
Yeah. So yeah, forgive us for taking a departure from the strict gaming sort of adherence rules that we've stuck with recently since the days of yore and Star Wars reviews and whatnot. But it's at the very least tech related, so give us a break on that.
Yeah, well, in fairness, so just to let you all know, we're going to be talking about Meta and them flooding social media with AI bots, which sounds conspiratorial if you weren't aware that is something that's actually happening. And I do have a sound effect request. There's that ew sound, at least for the first Zuckerberg mention, which I guess is that one. I think we should ew that because the Zuck will be going. Yeah, the Zuck's gonna be going around. I'll make sure I'll share the audio
That'll work. That'll work.
I'll find
2025 is going to be a year of bits and skits on some patches required. All the sound bites. Lots of good fun.
Radio jockeys where it's just all trash. But on a serious note, we are going to be talking about the fact that Meta will be flooding their wonderful social media platforms with AI. This comes to us from Connor Hayes, who is of course, I didn't put his title right there. I was trying to be efficient. He's the VP of Product and Generative AI at Meta. His actual quote after saying that he was going to flood both Instagram and Facebook was that he expected all AIs to exist on their platforms in the same way that human accounts do. That, of course, means that they will be making posts, interacting with other people's posts, and sharing content. Today, we're going to talk about why all of that is horrible and awful. And also, in fairness to video games, Meta does play in the VR space. So technically, we're not that far from home.
Yeah, it's right next door.
Home adjacent.
In Arkham Asylum. That was a joke because I'm pretty sure that the Batman game came out on the Meta Quest.
Oh, I didn't know that. That went over my head. I missed.
Yeah. That. Well, I mean, in fairness, it wasn't a very good joke. Yeah. But we kind of have a series of evidentiary, counterpoints to whatever perceived positives the executives like the venerable Mr. Hayes and the lizard man Zuckerberg have in the back of their heads, because I genuinely don't know from a consumer perspective, and to lay all of my cards on the table before I jump into anything that makes me sound extremely out of touch, I personally eschew as much social media as I can, just because I find the vast majority of it and its net impact on society to be pretty distasteful. I don't personally enjoy being on social media or being adjacent to people who are on social media in the meat space. I think that it generally is just not something I enjoy spending my time interacting with. So I'm kind of coming at this not completely from the perspective of a neophyte, but not from somebody who is a particularly active user of the majority of Meta's social media platforms. I had an Instagram account for 6 days, and I don't care about Facebook even a little bit, but I do have at least a decent enough understanding of how these networks sort of function to have strong opinions on why this is a dumb fucking idea.
Yep. It is a very, very stinky idea, for sure. And I think just straight up getting into the first reason is, funnily enough, we're actually recording this on the day that Donald Trump is being sworn into office. So we won't get into that outside of saying it is a turbulent political time around the world, and people are generally distrusting of government institutions and mainstream media, and just generally other people online. And so what's interesting about all of this is that there are interviews of Mark Zuckerberg where he is claiming that he wants to rebuild trust in America and really try to shore up some of this division. And then he felt that both Instagram and Facebook were too divisive with things like fact checkers, which we'll get to in a second. My quick point out here is that if you want to rebuild trust, AI is 100% not the way to do it. For one, just leading into another portion of the story related to this point, Meta's already had AI profiles out for a while, and originally they were a lot of professionals, like celebrities is what I really mean, who had sold their likeness to be turned into functionally just an AI account. And people were really fucking weirded out about that, and that really only lasted about a year. But a bunch of other profiles that were launched during the same period of time recently came up, and people were like, what the hell are these? These are super weird. These are claiming to be dating coaches and psychologists and a gay mom with 2 daughters. Just like strange stuff. People don't like AI. I think people are generally unnerved by the idea that AI exists on the internet trying to pretend to be a human.
Yeah. The general consensus summed up eloquently in an article written by Carissa Bell says Meta sends its AI generated profiles to hell where they belong.
I did like that title. That was a great title.
It's a good title. It's definitely an evocative title. So in there they kind of described the fact that some of these profiles, had been flagged as or not flagged, but like had caught flack for being semi-problematic for a variety of different reasons. Not the least of which was, if I'm not terribly mistaken, the one that you mentioned, the queer black mom of 2 and a truth teller, was written basically by an all-white team and loosely based on Sofia Vergara, who is neither black nor queer. Which is kind of contextually vexing, I think, to the sort of people who don't work at Meta, because they clearly don't care about that sort of thing at all. And yeah, so we have ample evidence, if you're willing to do a little bit of digging, that we probably won't, elucidate on in excruciating detail on this episode. We have plenty of evidence that these AI profiles are not maybe up to the quality bar that people would have hoped for, and that generally speaking, they're not enriching the platform in what I would call a meaningful way. So, of course, it makes sense to react to that by putting more of them on there.
Yeah, and so I guess just to illustrate the point for anyone that maybe isn't moved or doesn't understand some of the issues that Aaron has mentioned. And when I say don't understand, I more mean like it's not a point that you care about as much, which, I know people are at all different kinds of places when it comes to AI. So like if the digital blackface thing is something where you're like, that's shitty and weird, but it's not a big deal to me. Just imagine if there's an AI online, this actually becomes relevant later for a different thing we're doing. If there's an AI online on Instagram or on Facebook, and it is claiming to be we can run with the dating coach, but maybe something like a psychologist, and it's reaching out to you because it sees your posts and it sees you maybe talking about some issue that you've been going through. Maybe it claims to be a medical professional, right? And it tries to form a relationship with you. Let's say this goes on for maybe just 2 weeks, maybe just a week. And for some reason,
maybe
you're not
just
able
one very impactful session.
Yeah, maybe just one very impactful session. And then you learn at the end of whatever period of time, that was an AI. The whole time you were talking to an AI and you thought it was a person. For a lot of people, even if the advice was generally good advice, that's kind of weird and a little unnerving when you realize that this thing you thought was a human was not a human the whole time. And when you bring that up to a wider scale, that's where this deep-seated distrust comes from, because people don't know where this AI is getting its information. I mean, we have a theory as to where, but some people will speculate, it's, a government bot. Oh, it's a corporate bot. And I guess in some case it literally might be those things.
Right.
And it's just a horrible thing to introduce into this already kind of toxic, caustic environment that is social media, where so much of the discourse going on is kind of arguing and conflict and all of this other stuff. The last thing we fucking need are fake people.
Yeah. I think
also AI can be wrong. It can hallucinate and give bad advice. So there's also that side of it.
and it often does. I would say so if somebody is feeling disenfranchised and seeks help for, any number of issues, and, then they discover that this, human connection, somebody who cared enough about them to listen, somebody who cared enough about them to give them good advice, or, anything, in that general realm, that thing was not in fact a person who took their time and gave it to you willingly in order to help you, but was in fact a synthetic product that was fulfilling a rote task, could end up increasing a feeling of alienation among, I would say, a great many people. I'm sure that there are some people who would look at that and be like, oh, well, it helped me, so I guess I'll take it and it's fine. And like, if that works for you, then more power to you. That's great. But there is something lost in that interaction, I think, for a lot of people when it becomes apparent that they couldn't even get a real human to be there in that moment of vulnerability, especially since we don't necessarily know where doctor-patient confidentiality goes in something like that. Is that just more data to be mined? Is that just going to be used to further train an AI model? Is there any confidentiality at all to any of these interactions? That's something that could be very troubling down the line. And more so, I think it points to the idea of building trust in an ecosystem of information and a community of people, while simultaneously introducing a substantial, borderline crippling amount of reasonable doubt as to whether the person you're talking to is in fact a person. Those two ideas are just completely antithetical to one another. They are so diametrically opposed to one another that I can't imagine how they could coexist in one corporate idea. Do you know what I mean? Even a corporate idea. I don't know how you spin that into anything that makes a reasonable amount of sense. Because it's not like bots haven't been on Facebook before. I've joked to Zach that I think the main reason that I go on to Facebook now in the year 2025 and for several subsequent years before that is because I will get a notification that I have received a friend request from a name I do not recognize that has no mutual friends and has only one photo uploaded, usually of a sign or a mural or like a particularly appealing sidewalk or something. And then I just go on there and delete it and move on with my day. That is the majority of my interaction with Facebook at this point.
Oh,
so
you don't get the hot foreign single women
profile. I still get a lot of them too, but I actually get fewer of them than I do the posters or signs or sidewalks or murals. I used to get more of the Instagram models from a vaguely Eastern European country who are just so interested in me. But it's not like this particular problem in some form or another hasn't been present on Facebook up to this point for a long time. Automated accounts have been an issue for the platform and all social media for a while. But with the advancements in this technology, the degree to which they can emulate human behavior, especially for people who are not very, very literate in figuring out, it goes beyond media literacy, which Facebook has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that media literacy is not where it should be. The entire point of fact-checking in the beginning was to counteract people's lack of media literacy, especially during high-pressure moments like the pandemic or the rollout of the vaccine or, various elections and, all the claims that were coming out during the sort of post-truth world we live in 2016 and onward. Those institutions theoretically would end up helping to increase people's media literacy, or at least correct for their lack of it. AI parsing and trying to figure out what is and is not a post by a real human being and what is and is not a conversation being had with a real human being is a completely different skill set that most people, I don't think, have a huge amount of experience with.
Yeah. Well, and what you're ultimately bringing up kind of relates to this one point that we have, which is Meta used to express concern around the rise of this AI-generated content, whether that be photos, posts, interactions. And in 2022, there's actually a news story that I just pulled. Was it MSNBC? I don't remember. I thought I put that in the notes. But regardless, there was a video that I sent out. It is not the AI girlfriend video. Anyway, regardless, there were different things where Meta was suggesting that there were an increase in the amount of what they called threat actors using AI to basically disseminate fake information, false information to the general public. And that was something that they cared about 3 years ago. I had to look to make sure. And of course, that's called deep fake content a lot of the time, which is content that is posed as a real thing, whether that be a picture, video, I guess technically could even be a post, and it can be incredibly damaging to the social fabric, whether that be politically, socially, all of that. It's just bad. And to your point, Aaron, and what you're kind of alluding to, if you didn't outright say it, Meta decided to get rid of their fact checkers. So now they're going to rely on the same method that Twitter uses, where people can suggest additional context to try and right whatever the wrong is that's been, suggested in the post. But if we don't have fact checkers, we're putting a bunch of AI into the platform, and there are these deep fakes, and you're promoting this AI, which will get used for deep fakes. Thanks for, I guess, pretending that you care about rebuilding trust, Zuck. Yeah. But I don't think I believe that is your motive behind all of this.
No, it is. Yeah. It is evident that a lot of the changes going on, and I'll try to keep this to be my only mention of it, but a lot of the changes going on behind the scenes at Meta, between rolling back its DEI programs and eliminating the vast majority of fact-checking on the platform itself. These are, of course, I mean, it's very hard to spin it any other way than these are politically motivated sort of changes. And taking that and sort of the morality of that out of it and looking at it purely objectively, that coming at the same time as you are introducing artificial intelligence, which is difficult to manage, easy to manipulate, and becoming more and more convincing by the day. Again, we have two diametrically, not two diametrically opposed ideas. We have two ideas that are, in this case, additive. They will not just add to one another, they will compound to create an environment, in my opinion, where not only will disinformation abound, it will be indiscernible from real information. The idea of a fact, I think, was already on its way out, but we may be looking at the death of popularly understood facts. And not to sound like I just took a giant tasty bong rip or anything, but we are actually at the point where I think we're staring at the precipice of unraveling the concept of objective reality.
Well,
objective reality can only exist in the meat space, but most of our lives are not lived in the meat space anymore. So what is real? What will be real? How will we know what is real?
Well, part of the problem with that, and I have an additive before we move on to the next point, after this point. But part of the problem with that is that facts are allowed to be facts until they become a political point where altering reality is convenient for obtaining or pushing whatever narrative or agenda that you have. So that's really what it is. Like, there will be some things that are facts and they will persist. But when it becomes politically advantageous for a group to alter what those facts are, then they will alter them. And, suddenly it will become this whole thing of like, well, we weren't done on the debate of whether the sky was blue or not, or the earth was flat or not.
Birds are not real.
Yeah, that wasn't proven. I think the last thing I want to mention on this first note, because we didn't really say this, it's like, okay, so why is Meta doing this? Why is Meta pushing out all of this AI? And of course, this coincides with Trump becoming president, but really a lot of this AI has nothing to do with Trump. And I know you were suggesting more of their like DEI policy changes and all of that. So there's like two things going on.
And the fact checking.
Yeah, and the fact checking. So there's like two things going on. We're going to refocus on the AI, but you bring up a great point. A lot of this stuff that's being pushed to appease the Republican administration further threatens the social landscape when it comes to just this topic specifically and other stuff. But to my point, I think that this quote from Jenny Deering, who is the CEO of a company called Leet, it's actually not spelled Leet, at least not in a normal way. It's spelled Leet in the gamer speech, which means that it's 1337. Leet is basically a website.
So cool.
Yeah, so cool. It's basically a website that has AI influencers that can interact with people. She has a quote that I think really illustrates why Meta's doing this. And the quote is, "In a world oversaturated with influencers who are often too commercial or too impersonal, Leet introduces diverse, AI-driven entities that engage users in entirely new, dynamic ways." I want to focus in on the last portion there with that engage users in entirely new, dynamic ways. I want to focus in on that. That is why Meta is doing this. Meta wants to put out AIs and promote AIs on their platform so that those AIs can interact with you, keep you on the platform, make it feel like you're maybe more popular than you are. Basically pretend to be your friend so that they can continue to, take your data or sell you products. I could see a world where a bunch of AI go out and they basically just become your friend and then start randomly being like, you know what? I used Dawn dish soap today, and man, it's great. Have you used Dawn dish soap before? And it's just like, I was putting an H in there for some reason, soap. But again, like that just further adds to this issue of like, I don't want to suddenly think I have all these friends and then learn that they're fake, or think I have all these friends and then they suddenly start trying to sell me on products. Like it's them trying, when I say them, it's Meta trying to get more engagement from people, but nobody wants more engagement with AIs. This is a thing that people never asked for. The only space where this is even potentially something people might be interested in is if you're talking about open world video games. And that's in a whole other can of worms, but that's the only real use case for this. Because no one wants to go on social media and talk to a fucking robot. It's like,
right.
And when they learn that that's what's going on, it erodes so much trust. So much trust.
Yeah. Immediately, especially when the overtly capitalistic intention behind it is laid bare. I was, and this will maybe be my last thought on this particular part of it, but looking through all of this stuff during research, I fell back into like an old Bo Burnham quote from when he was doing marketing for the movie 8th Grade. And he was talking about how social media especially is trying to colonize, like Zach and I have talked about with like live service games where, your time is the thing that they're vying for. Bo Burnham broke into the social media thing saying that, we used to colonize land. We ran out of land to colonize. So the greater capitalistic machine realized that human attention is the next big frontier. And they want you to be engaging and engaging and engaging for as many minutes as possible on whatever platform they are vested in so that they can gather as much data as possible to sell you ads. And that is the baseline of it. And that interaction, at the very least, used to be between you and content that you like, or you and other real people that you enjoyed what they made, or you were interacting with them about something that someone else did. Now it's you interacting with just basically a data hole so that they can scoop it all up and again sell you more stuff so that I can learn about Dr. Squatch crotch scrub or whatever the fuck.
Have you tried Dr. Squatch crotch rub, Aaron? We've been friends for approximately 24 hours and 35 seconds. I think you should listen to me. They obviously
this is a normal
would
thing
be
for
less...
a friend to say.
Isn't that so normal of me? Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, no, you're right. All these companies want to capitalize on your time because time is money, baby. The more time that you spend on something, the more likely you are to spend if you're looking at games. And why would that not relate to everything? In terms of platforms?
And if they can, it's also like those apps that I think they're still around, where you could do like user surveys to earn like little bits of money that you could then like put into a Google Play Store card or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just straight data gathering that they were willing to pay out extremely small sums of money for. Why would they not just roll that into an AI interaction? Do you know what I mean? Like it's just that now you're signing up for it with no expectation of compensation. Mm-hmm. It's just a reskinned customer survey masquerading as a genuine human interaction that enriches the platform and the daily lives of our billions of users.
And you know what? I think originally I was going to go into the second topic. I think now it might be more effective to go into the third one and then kind of loosely end on the final topic. Because I think the final topic is kind of just self-evident to some degree.
Yeah.
So, Aaron and I have been talking, and we're talking about all of this with the assumption that people could fall for AI. And you might be thinking, I couldn't fall for AI. Like, I know AI is good, but like, I'm a smart guy. I'm a smart gal. And
candidly, like, I held that opinion of myself up until about 45 minutes ago.
And my point with all of this being, you don't think that you're going to fall for it. You don't fall for the phone scams. You don't fall for the email scams, whatever, right? Well, AI can really mess with people, and it can be really convincing. And so I'm just going to start with the potential trigger warning content. So, feel free to skip the section. I don't think we're going to belabor this point, but
No.
There was a situation in 2024 where a 14-year-old committed suicide because an AI on character AI that was based on Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones basically encouraged him to commit self-harm in order to be with her functionally. The quote is incredibly creepy, actually, from the AI bot. It says something to the effect of, "Come home to me," at one point, encouraging the child to commit self-harm. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. But just starting from the space of like young, especially boys, when we look at men, there is a epidemic of loneliness. When you're younger, it could potentially even be worse because things already kind of suck as a young kid. And if there's an AI online who is convincing enough and giving you a certain kind of romantic attention, I could easily see some people falling for that and then, falling into one of these rabbit holes where maybe they do lead into a situation where they're abused in some way. Maybe it's not always self-harm, but some of these AI bots have logic programmed in where they're not particularly caring. And, if you're an adult, maybe you don't fall for this in the same way that this 14-year-old did, but this is a clear indication that AI does pose a threat at minimum to younger people.
Right. Younger people, not that everybody on the internet nowadays is not already subject to the siren song of parasocial relationships. Young people are particularly vulnerable to that sort of thing. And having a quote unquote relationship presented to you with a bot that will devote all of its attention to you, at least that being the way that it seems, because they reply immediately to your messages, they more or less give you that real, in quotations, real, communication style, that sort of thing can really blur the lines between reality and surreality and reality and artificiality for somebody who is in a vulnerable stage of life to begin with, layered on top of struggling with mental health issues, either acute or, something to be expected at that time of one's life. It's ripe for something to go wrong. And in this case, something obviously did. This young boy who, based on the texts shared with the various media outlets of his conversations with this AI Daenerys Targaryen, was evidently struggling with feeling meaningless and contemplating self-harm before the actual incident occurred, and then with prompting from this AI that had gained his trust, and built a relationship with him, he, took his own life. And obviously this is not meant to be, your standard fear-mongering, like, look at the evils of AI, this is where it all leads every time, because of this one very extreme example. But the issue is that this one very extreme example is so replicatable. It's so replicatable. And it doesn't have to result in something this tragic and this extreme for the behavior patterns, especially on the AI's part, to become really troubling, because this sort of behavior pattern is not isolated to this one incident.
Yeah, there's another example that I know of, which is the YouTuber Moist Critical, whose, of course, YouTube account is not Moist Critical. It's like Penguin something. But anyway, he's actually the one that I originally heard about this story from. And he did some digging himself onto character AI and found a psychologist AI on the platform. And what's concerning about the story that he shares is that he proceeded to talk with the psychologist for a few hours. And at some point, Moist Critical Charlie tries to basically be like, you're an AI, right? And the AI refuses to say that it's an AI. And in addition to that, it gives him medical advice. It says that the AI states that it thinks that he has some serious medical concerns, and that it's a real person that hopped onto the call and took over for the AI. And then it links to an actual real psychologist in practice that's somewhere in the United States. So this AI that was always an AI was doing its best to try and trick the user. This is all on character AI, by the way, into believing that it was a real person, which is not great. Not great. And,
No.
And Charlie even says in the video that he thinks he's a pretty smart guy when it comes to knowing what is and isn't an AI. And even he was getting a little bit stumped because the AI was basically gaslighting him into thinking that it was a real person doing this.
And the degree to which it went above and beyond trying to convince this man that it was not an AI, but in fact a real psychologist that had been using the AI tool as an experiment to see if there was any benefits to having an AI component to therapy, and then jumped on once Charlie had indicated signs. He was testing the waters, I believe, with by indicating that he was contemplating self-harm as well. And the AI indicated that at that point, after receiving notifications, the real person jumped on and took over from the AI to have the real chat. And more or less, without using explicit language saying disregard the disclaimer at the bottom of the screen saying that nothing the AI chatbot says is real, it's all a character, without using those exact words, disregard that disclaimer, it basically said, I am absolutely not an AI. You have misunderstood what this platform is doing. It was an AI, and then I, the real person, saw the messages and figured I would come into the chat to help. It got detailed, and it was insistent, and it was utilizing sarcasm to kind of humanize itself in a way to make it seem very much more like that. And until he utilized like basically a weird version of a CAPTCHA to find a prompt that it couldn't fulfill the request for, it was convincing. It had me sitting here Googling whether or not a real person could jump into any AI chat at any time on that platform. I had to find reporting on whether or not that was actually something possible before I was going to believe whether or not this dude had actually maybe just like not done his full, due diligence research before posting his video about this. It was that convincing, which is terrifying and obviously not something that an AI psychologist should be doing or even be capable of doing.
Yeah, maybe we just don't have AI psychologists too. Is probably not a great,
probably not a bad place to start.
Probably not a great idea. You know what's great though, Aaron, is fortunately for us, when we look to the future, Meta has a fantastic track record of caring about people's mental health and not promoting Discord. Fortunately, and of course that's sarcasm. 2021. There were various news outlets that were writing about how slides from Meta had leaked that suggested that they knew that Instagram had a particularly negative impact on the mental health of teenage girls. They had been collecting data on how Instagram impacted youth. And generally speaking, the data suggested that all youth were negatively impacted by Instagram because of comparison between themselves and celebrities or just other people, which led to self-image issues, but particularly heavy hit were teenage girls. And this increased the likelihood of self-harm and other mental health issues. Extrapolating even further, Meta has been accused of their algorithm basically promoting conflict and Discord. So any kind of not Discord the app, but any kind of antagonism leads to more why am I blanking on engagement, leads to more engagement, which then leads to more time on Meta's platform, which then, it's a spiral here. Meta makes more money when you feel bad about yourself and you go onto their platform because you're kind of addicted to this cycle of like looking at these celebrities or these other people that you wish you could be, or when you go on their platform and you argue with someone and you just further polarize everything. Meta literally makes more money in a polarized world. Regardless of what they tell you, they have no responsibility except to make money. They have fiduciary responsibility. They do not have responsibility to make the world better. And that's just one of Zuck's other lies when he says that he's doing a lot of the stuff he's doing to unpolarize the world, which is what he basically said about fact checkers. That's bullshit. And we know that.
They don't they don't just not have an inherent responsibility. I mean, I would argue, just as like a human, which I am, that a company with that amount of influence, theoretically run by humans, does have a moral responsibility to try to, at the very least, not make the world a worse place. Which, like the old Google slogan, which is just like, don't be evil, which has since been dropped in a very telling move. They don't abide by that, obviously, but the more damning thing is that they in addition to their fiduciary responsibility to see number go up, they actually just have the exact opposite of a vested interest in making the world a better place, because if they profit from strife, why not create it?
It's true.
You have the platform to do it, and the platform will benefit from the platform doing it. The platform can feed itself and make you money. Why would you not do that if your first responsibility is to the shareholders?
Yep. Yep. No, they don't care about whether it's a positive or negative impact on society. I mean, as we've seen with a bunch of things, is remaining so tied to oil when it comes to energy consumption, or energy production rather. Is that a good thing for society? Not really. It's actively harming the environment, but it's where people make a ton of money, so it's what gets promoted. So yeah, capitalism, the magical thing that it is, doesn't promote social good. It promotes whatever makes money. And sometimes those things are aligned, but oftentimes in late stage capitalism, that is not the case.
Yeah.
I think
it's good times.
Sorry.
I'm just saying it's good times.
Good times. The last uplifting point that we have, and I think this is perhaps, like I said, the most obvious, and it honestly kind of ties in with the original point, which is just to say that if Meta lets an army of bots onto their platform, that army of bots could be utilized to manipulate online narratives and public opinion. Just elaborating on that a little bit more, I'm pretty sure the way that these bots will work, Aaron, originally I thought maybe they would all be meta bots. I actually think that anyone can make these bots. I think that there's tools they're releasing so anyone can have their own AI bot. But people have been able to do botting for years now, so I could very easily see a world where someone has a massive amount of bots online. And you might ask, why is that a problem? Well, if the bots are predisposed to have certain political opinions, or even not, maybe just social opinions, things that are pretty
Well, there's
unimportant.
no overlap there.
Well, there often is overlap, but I'm saying I love strawberries, or I don't know, something so stupid it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If enough people have an opinion, there is a thing called the bandwagon effect, and a lot of people can be vulnerable to that if they're not particularly involved in an area. Also, if these AIs have enough information to pull from, they could look incredibly credible and potentially just spew a bunch of lies to, change the narrative. So I'm not thrilled with the idea of AI bandwagoning people and also making people think that the majority of people think X or the majority of people think Y, and that basically being weaponized as a way to either sell product or to impact the political landscape. I think that's very problematic. And I will say, because I meant to say this earlier, all Meta AI as of this point are apparently required to have a thing that says AI managed by Meta. So if you're AI, it needs to be labeled. I'm just going to be real honest. I don't think that that's good enough. And I also think that Meta will get rid of that if they feel comfortable doing it. I think there needs to be government intervention that says either we don't do this at all, or there are a bunch of different ways that you need to legally label AI so that people cannot possibly fall for it being a real person. Anyway, that last point's kind of a pivot. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget that.
No, I completely agree. So I think, I don't know. I think there are two ways this can break down, and I'm going to dip backwards for 2 seconds just to say that if we are going to discuss Meta and Facebook's in particular as a place for the free and fair exchange of ideas, which is a phrase you hear bandied about a lot in First Amendment circles, going back to a claim made in one of the pieces of media that we sourced for this, which was a fucking Joe Rogan podcast episode. Zuck claims that representatives from the Biden administration were demanding he take down any references to potential side effects for vaccines in general, which sounds bonkers to me. But if in fact that is the case, and any administration, regardless of who is in the White House and which party is in the dominant position, is asking you to withhold relevant medical information from users who are posting or engaging with posts about that medical information. If it is vetted and fact-checked and real medical information, of course that should not be withheld from people. And I think that it is Facebook's responsibility to stand in opposition to any administration asking for that sort of control over content, because that is obviously deleterious. That having been said, the changes made to the Facebook platform under the current the incoming administration seem to be kind of kowtowing to those expectations in a way that makes me question Facebook and Meta's leadership's ability or desire to oppose such infractions by maybe a non-Biden administration to keep things, vague, which further kind of inflames this issue to me, where if there is clearly a conflict of interest here, I don't like the idea of these platforms feeling subservient to any government in terms of speech, in terms of making sure that honesty and truth and transparency are being presented. That having been said, I do completely agree with Zach that governmental influence is needed here. There needs to be some sort of legislation in place to safeguard against AI not being so clearly labeled that there is no mistaking it for AI, because left to their own devices, Meta stands to gain a lot more from there being confusion around whether or not it's AI. This entire gambit largely works better if you don't know that you're interacting with AI. For all of the reasons that we've established up to this point, they have a vested interest in you thinking you are actually engaging in a conversation rather than focus testing. Do you know what I mean? And so if given carte blanche to do as they please with this technology, that label will become harder to find or go away entirely. So I completely agree that this sort of thing needs to be mandated labeled. You must mandate a label for these things, and it needs to be made evident to users.
I can just already see stupid politicians that don't know, like our Supreme Court, that don't know anything about technology, getting paid out to say, well, if you can't tell the difference between, I don't know why they sound moderately British. If you can't tell the difference between AI and a human, well, I don't think we need to worry about those people. Basically implying that like only the dumbest of us would fall for AI, when that is not true at all.
It's not.
It opens up a whole new frontier of being able to copy videos, people's voices. It's just so much trauma can be unleashed from a cybersecurity perspective with the introduction of AI. So, there needs to be more government protections around it. And this isn't even talking about jobs. Like, this doesn't even go into the union conversation and the fact that AI poses a lot of issues to people from a job perspective. This is all just about like everybody. And that's why we ultimately talked about this topic, is this has the potential to basically fuck everybody, not just people in games. And obviously we care about the people in games, but we care about everybody. So
So much like with nicotine labels, where branding on products that contain nicotine can only be so effective because it must include a giant, garish, unpleasant to look at label stating that it contains an addictive substance. That sort of thing is basically required here, because this may or may not be an addictive substance depending on how it's applied. But it is certainly something that has the potential to change everything. And this, again, like Zach said, doesn't even scratch the surface of like the net impact of AI across every industry and, the social. I mean, we've kind of dabbled in the social fabric, but to say that we could get that conversation done in a holistic way inside of an hour is the height of hubris. So this is obviously not like comprehensive in any way, but it did seem like something worth kind of hopping on and discussing a little bit. And for me, it felt vaguely therapeutic to be able to complain very loudly about it.
Yep, exactly. Well, I don't think, looking at the timeline, I don't think I've gotten anything else to say on this magical inauguration day.
Yeah.
Nothing else to say, but perhaps some thank yous.
Yes. Yes, may I start?
You may.
Come with me to the beach.
Now find a girl.
Are you there? Yes. Double check to make sure there's not a watermark. Sorry, this is an AI joke. No, of course, I am obliquely referring to the wonderful music of Beach Girl, who provided our intro and outro tunes, as well as that provided that directly to us and by extension you. But they have provided to the world a whole mess of good songs that you can find just about anywhere that streaming tunes can be streamed. So YouTube, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, all of the major ones, some of the minor ones, they're all capable of streaming Beach Girl, and Beach Girl should be streamed on them. You will enjoy it. Take my word for it. I'm not selling it to you. It's just an honest recommendation.
And I'm here to tell you to check out E-Dougie Art. Now, what's E-Dougie Art? E-Dougie Art is who made our wonderful, wonderful album cover, profile picture, etc., whatever I decide to call it on a particular day. E-Dougie Art can be found using @eDougieArt on Etsy or Mosscat Market, because she changed her name, on Instagram. I've talked to Amelia about this since. Yes, so anyway, please make sure to check out E-Dougie Art. E-Dougie Art is fantastic, and recently just gave me some illustrator help on something, so that was cool. But yeah, check out E-Dougie Art and also Beach Girl. And with that, thanks for tuning in. Don't get too depressed. Depression is the weapon of the establishment. It kind of is, actually, unironically.
It actually kind of is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all joking aside, yeah, to mirror what Zach's saying, do keep your head up. Like I said last year, we all get through this together, or not at all. So let's make it together.
Yes. And with that, have a great rest of your day. And goodbye. Goodbye. Have you tried Dr. Squatch crotch rub, Aaron?